Hi, I'm Erin Lucy, and welcome back to my channel. I know I've been very MIA. It's a very busy semester, but I did want to wrap up my November reads, everything I read in November. It was honestly a pretty mediocre reading month. I didn't get to as much as I hoped, and yeah, did not read any like standout really books or highlights, and also read probably the worst book I've read all year, which is unfortunate. So anyway, we'll start off with one that was pretty good, and that is my nonfiction that I read that month was Visual Thinking by Grandin. And I actually read this very beginning of the month as I was reading it because I was interviewing Grandin for Utah Public Radio, which was amazing, probably one of highlights already from doing like science communication and radio stuff. Super cool. And I read her book in preparation because it came out in October. It was good. Yeah, it was about visual thinking and versus verbal thinking and how people think differently and how there are even different visual thinkers. And yeah, it was really good. I recommend it. I feel like there were a few semi-repetitive parts, but I did like how it was like broken down and really broke down different examples of people from the real world who use different types of thinking and kind of how that is impacting society and potentially future society. So yeah, it's broken into 7 parts versus like what is visual thinking, defining it. Screened out is the second part. So she really emphasized how like a lot of people who are more visual thinkers get kind of screened out of things and don't necessarily make it to like into like jobs that would be like important or really where they could like thrive. So talking about that, where are all the clever engineers is part 3, complementary minds, genius and neurodiversity, visualizing risk to prevent disasters, and then animal consciousness and visual thinking. So through those 7 parts, like talking about the different types of thinking and how they can really benefit society and how that like having diverse minds, diverse ways of thinking is really advantageous to society and to building our world. So yeah, it was awesome. She used a lot of like really great examples and people and projects that have utilized lots of different types of thinking and the strengths that those different types of thinking have. So yeah, that is visual thinking. Next, I'm going to talk about the 2 Throne of Glass books I read. So honestly, most of the books I read this month were fantasy. Not sure. I think it's just because I'm so busy. So I've been in a lot of like escapist books. It's been easier for me to get through. Like even the Grandin book, I actually downloaded the audiobook, which helped me like get through it faster. But I'm continuing my Throne of Glass journey, and I'm doing a whole separate vlog on it. I started the vlog because I thought it would be like a Court of Thorns and Roses and go super quick, but I gotta be honest, it has not been that for me. And I feel like this is maybe one of a more controversial opinion, but Throne of Glass has not been my favorite series for sure. And don't get me wrong, I read Heir of Fire and Queen of Shadows this month, and I started on the next one, Empire of Storms. And definitely things like picked up and got significantly more interesting in Heir of Fire. Like towards the end, I don't know like how much to say, so I guess like kind of mini spoilers for the earlier books, but the introduction of Rowan and like Celaena's development into who she is. She kind of stopped as much with like my frustration with her in the earlier books was kind of like her arrogance and kind of just very YA main character vibes, and I feel like I've just not been feeling that. So yeah, hasn't been my favorite series, but I definitely like these 2 way more than Throne of Glass and Crown of Midnight. The action definitely picks up and you start to meet interesting characters, and at this point I have become like a lot more invested in the characters. I really like Manon, by the way, so very excited to read more about her. The next is continuing a little fantasy journey. This is Daughter of No Worlds. This is probably my favorite fiction from the whole month, so I actually enjoyed this better than Throne of Glass books, surprisingly. I don't know. By Carissa Broadbent. And this was my our book club read for the month. So I had this like book club. We read these like fantasy books And this was November's read, Daughter of No Worlds. And I think someone in our group suggested it because it was supposed to have like very A Court of Thorns and Roses vibes. And I actually thought it was like a lot more different than ACOTAR than I was originally expecting it to be. So far kind of surprised, like definitely very different magic, very different vibes to me. But I've really liked it so far. I felt like it has been different enough, but also super intriguing and interesting. And I actually have liked the main character, Tasana, and I really like Max and their interaction. Max has like one of the most tragic backstories of any character I feel like I've ever read. So yeah, there's that. And definitely did a lot of tabbing because it was for our book club, but this was super fun. It is about this girl. So I guess it actually almost kind of had Throne of Glass vibes. And that's actually kind of what inspired me to pick up Throne of Glass again, is like starting to read this because I felt like it was similar vibes. So far, I think I prefer this one. And I think it has those Throne of Glass vibes because in the beginning, she like escapes a toxic situation. She's a slave and she escapes that situation and goes to this place called the Orders, or where the Orders are, so she can develop her magic. And things go from there. This guy Max is like in charge of training her, and of course he really doesn't want to, but is told he has to. So there's, you know, a lot of vibes there, but lots of secrets, lots of mystery. I actually liked it enough though that I already got the second 2 books in the series, and they, oh my god, so thick. Like this one's like, I don't know, they just get thicker and thicker as it goes on. So we'll see when I get to those. Again, I'm like feeling it and excited, but I have heard that the second one starts to change points of view, so that'll be interesting. So yeah, Daughter of No Worlds, recommend. Super fun, great escapism, fantasy. Yeah. Okay, so next section I'm going to talk about the worst book I read all year. I think this like for sure beats anything else. And that's called The Lycan's Queen. And I talked about this in I believe it was my weekend, like last week in the life vlog. And I don't even know if I don't even want to talk about this book anymore, but essentially I saw this ad on Instagram, clicked on the app, horrible app. I'm not even gonna mention its name. I talked about it in the other one. And definitely like trying to just get money out of people. And the book, I was like intrigued by the storyline, which is why I downloaded it. I forget what it said. It was something like, oh, like this girl, you know, who, I don't know, her like the person she thinks is like her true love, her mate, and they're werewolves. He like leaves for a few years. He brings a girl back with him who's his mate. And then they all go to this like ball. So this is just like the beginning, I don't know, quarter of the book, or even less, few chapters. They go to this like ball at the King's, and the King sees her and she's his mate. That all happens like within the first few chapters. I'm not even sure why I was intrigued, because I feel like the mate thing is very overdone in a lot of things, but I started reading it and I continued for some reason, even though like, I feel guilty saying this, but truly some of the worst writing I've ever read. I mean, I don't even know how to explain how terrible. I like really terrible. Like to the point where for the last like 100 pages at least, like I was like skimming it. I mean, I honestly would have DNF'd, except I don't know. I feel like I should have DNF'd. But like, plot didn't make sense. It was kind of all over the place. There was not like a clear start to finish. Did not feel like there was not a lot of effort put into it. I don't know what to think about it, because I can't find it anywhere else other than this app. So it's already like scammy and kind of weird, but also I don't know. The whole plot I could not, like the voice was terrible. I could not. I think I said in my Weekend in Life video is like, I feel like I would have written something like that in like middle school, to be honest. Okay, so we're gonna stop there. Stop with the hate, because I feel bad, but it was not great. Okay, let's move on. Something a little bit better. And that is Gallant by V.E. Schwab. I like listened to this book and followed along, which I thought was good, kind of got me into it. I read The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, which I think a lot of people did and got super into her that way. Like, I didn't read her YA growing up. In the past couple of years, I read This Savage Song, and I did enjoy that. Gallant, first of all, I wasn't really sure if this was supposed to be YA or adult. I guess kind of had YA vibes, but I thought she used V.E. Schwab for her adult books. Anyway, that's an aside. If anyone knows anything, let me know. But it's about this girl, Olivia Pryor, and she lives in this orphanage, and she gets this letter from her uncle that's like, come home to Gallant. We miss you, we want you here, like, very convincing. And the kind of backstory is that she only has a few things from her, like, mom and her family, and one is this, like, journal that was her mom's. And the journal, like, addresses her and kind of tells her the one thing she should never do is go back to Gallant. So she does. She goes to Gallant, and she really wants to belong. She wants to go someplace. So she goes there, and Gallant is like this big mansion where the family has lived for years, and there's like a lot of shadows involved, and kind of like seeing like these shadows and ghosts, and kind of like beyond the living world. And Olivia can like see these things, I think, more than others. I'm a little bit unclear on like what, like, if other people could see these things. It seemed like for her, she could see them much more than others, which makes sense later. I won't talk about that. But she gets wrapped up in this house, realizes things are a little bit more dark than they seem. So, Gallant, I thought it was like decent, definitely better than the last one I read, but I definitely didn't like feel the same feels as when I read The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, which I think is generally a pretty common consensus around this one. I didn't really know what to expect though, so I wasn't like, I feel like I tried to keep my expectation low because I'd heard that people were kind of mixed on it, so I thought it was pretty good. I've been trying to do that more, especially with like TikTok and like viral social media books, which I think is awesome because it's sharing books a lot, but I've had such high expectations for things that have like a ton of review or people rave about, and I've been really disappointed in some things. So I've been trying to just keep my expectation low, and I think that worked, but definitely still like not a favorite. So that is Gallant. And then the last book I read was the audiobook, and that is Carrie Soto is Back. And man, Taylor Jenkins Reid does it every time. I actually wasn't even sure about this book. I kind of wasn't super vibing with it for the first like half, which seems like a long way, but the writing was good, and it was good. I just wasn't super invested, I would say, and didn't like love the characters, but that's very typical Taylor Jenkins Reid. So, of course, ended up loving it. It's about this fictional tennis star, Carrie Soto, and her struggles as a tennis player, kind of just like her history as a tennis player. Beginning is when she's like younger and up and coming, and then she like gets an injury and goes back into the game later when she's older than all the other people playing, and it's just kind of very criticized for her age at that point, and everyone like looks down at her. So there's a lot of really interesting things, a few crossovers with the other Taylor Jenkins Reid books, so that was like really fun. I will say, as far as my Taylor Jenkins Reid ranking, I guess, goes, I feel like Carrie Soto is Back was probably more on the level of Malibu Rising for me, and I liked both, like both Carrie Soto is Back and Malibu Rising. I rated 4 stars, really good. But Daisy Jones and the Six and the 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, I like loved, both 5-star. I was kind of contemplating this because like as I'm like making this video, I was like getting my thoughts together, and by the end of Carrie Soto is Back, I was like super invested and really loved it. So I would say for me, it's like Daisy Jones and the Six, the 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, and Carrie Soto is Back, and then Malibu Rising. So, but Taylor Jenkins Reid is just always good, and that's not to say, again, all those like really good. She's great, just like her writing is consistently really good. So yes, and actually maybe Carrie Soto is Back, that one and Daughter of No Worlds, those two were my favorites from the month. So that's everything I read in November. I would love to hear what you all have been reading, if you have any really good recommendations. Sorry, I hear a dog barking. And hopefully I will get my New York City vlog up in the next couple of days, probably this weekend. So yeah, I hope you have a great day, and thanks for watching.